Well, this isn't going to be probably your traditional talk. I'm really not promoting anything but plants. It's not about company. It's not necessarily about making money. But obviously, if we all want to, satisfy our habit and our appetite for plants, we have to have a way to make a living at it. And with a downturn in economy and things, it's caused, I think, a lot of us in this industry to really redefine ourselves and really think about what is the value of plants. Are plants even valuable anymore? I mean, we've seen some dramatic decreases in sales. And so with that in mind, I just let my mind really go back in history a long, long way and said, when did plants become vogue? When did plants become interesting? When did plants become necessary and important in society? And as I dug into this even farther, as you're going to see here, plants are incredibly important. They're incredibly inspiring. And I don't even think we really understand what we're dealing with completely yet in the way of science. There's several books by plant hunters and about plant hunters. And this was one of the statements that's one of my favorites, where it talks about a gentleman, Philbert de Commerson, who is a self-confessed botanomaniac. Is there any botanomaniacs in here? I mean, it seems like the people that are into plants are just a weird group. There's something that doesn't make sense about us. We might not be right in our mind, I don't know. But when you look at the rest of this, it says the mere suspicion of a plant unknown to him was an irresistible attraction. I mean, anywhere I go, I'm always looking for the new plant, the different plant. How did they make that plant grow here? This isn't supposed to happen. And these guys were traveling all over the world when they didn't have super cruisers, and they were really risking their lives to do this. When it goes on down there, it says he was known to travel by himself, taking with him hardly any money or provisions, returning home sick, scarred with wounds, shaken by falls and accidents of all kind, as well as utterly worn out by his exertions and by the violence of his own enthusiasm. There's a lot of landscapers in here that probably have lived that dream, just utterly worn out, and the violence of their own enthusiasm has almost done them bodily harm, and I can relate to that. Good God, wrote the Swedish botanist Linnaeus, who, again, you think of this is clear back in the 16 and 1700s. You would think back then that there would have been better things to do than worry about plants unknown. But anyway, when I consider the melancholy fate of so many of botany's votaires, I'm tempted to ask whether men in their right minds who so desperately risk life and everything else through their love of collecting plants. And anyway, that I think tends to sum up a lot of the heart and soul of what goes on in our industry and within our people. What labor is more severe? What science is more wearisome than botany? And it's true. And as we look at this a little bit more, we're going to understand what that means. All right, so what we're going to do is go through just a few things that will demonstrate the relevancy of plants back all through history. The Babylonian gardens. Did they need a horticulturist back then? Yeah. Did they need a landscaper back then? Yeah. Did they need a designer? Did they need food? Did they need medicines? Absolutely. And it was, even back then, it was necessary. Is our product still relevant today? Absolutely. There is a need in our society, probably more so now than ever, because we're creating these asphalt jungles and these concrete worlds we live in. And the desire to have plants around is innately human. The Jefferson Estates. Let's go to the next one. Mount Vernon. Has anybody been to those two places? A large part of those estates were all about plants. And it's amazing to me, here it was, our founding fathers that were trying to come across the pond to start a new country, and yet in their spare time, they were busy about plants. That's insane. They're inventing a brand new government, but yet they wanted to have all this stuff going on with plants. And obviously, a lot of this wasn't just food. I mean, look at that. I mean, they had an eye for design. They had an eye for layout of landscaping and all the things that are associated with plants. Kew Gardens, clear back to the 16 and 1700s. They were collecting plants from all over the world back then. The kings, I would love to be employed by a king. Who would love to be employed by a king? They have lots of money. And they say, hey, I want you to go to South America and get me some orchids. I'm in. Would that have been great? I mean, a lot of them died, but what a privilege to be able to search the globe for plants. The Egyptian Empire, you know, a lot of what they did was about food. And I don't know if you remember some of the stories about there was the big famine and all, and the children of Israel had to come to Egypt to get food, as well as other countries. Well, these guys became masters of production of food and storage and all that. Do we need to have masters of food and masters of storage of foods and stuff today? Is there better ways of doing it? Absolutely. Is there things that we haven't even figured out yet? Absolutely. In an environment like this, a school, this is where we're supposed to be coming up with greater, newer, and better ideas. I got 4 boys, and they're always challenging all the old school thinking that I bring. It's all I have, you know, and I'm like, okay, guys, then you come up with something better. It can happen, but it's not going to happen without a lot of thought and a lot of understanding about the history and a lot of appreciation for what the future can look like. How many people from Ireland ended up in America because of the potato famine? There's some good things about horticulture. There's some horrible things that have happened. They've got entire monuments that talk about this. And again, how does that relate to us? It's plants, guys. I mean, is it important that somebody knows how to not let some disease take out our wheat crops? Can you imagine? I mean, we're so insulated from these things these days, but something could happen. It could eliminate the wheat. What would happen? And do we have anybody today that's agriculturally minded enough to go to work on it and prevent it from absolutely causing a devastation? 25% of the medicines are plant-derived. We know that we haven't even begun to tap how many medicines and how many compounds are in these plants, not only for medicinal purposes, but maybe for even manufacturing and all sorts of things. I had a chance to go to Scotland. I mean, you know, if you go to Europe and a lot of, or England and those areas, they really don't have much in the way of forests. Well, neither did Scotland. If you go to Scotland, the Canadians came over and planted their forests for them. Their forests are all in rows. It is hilarious. You're driving by and you just see a huge forest and it's all in perfect rows, you know? So, I mean, you know, it's amazing. Take a country that has no forest. Could you come in and plant a forest? Could you tell them how to do it? That's pretty incredible. Herbs and spices, the East Indies trade route. I mean, we know all about that from even back in the colonial days and when they were trying to find America and they thought, well, hey, instead of going all the way around Africa to the east, maybe we can go to the west. But it was all about, you know, trading of a lot of horticultural products. My favorite herb is ketchup, so I'm not a good guy to talk to about that, but I know there's a lot of other things out there that are good. So what were the secrets of the early earth? And again, you guys, I hope that when you think about your profession, you don't think about now. Think about all of history. And the fossil record is full of clues, and the fossil record is full of all sorts of interesting things about plants. And, you know, and what does the fossil record show? Was this earth the same now as it was years ago? Absolutely not. We know that. There's a lot of things that aren't around anymore. And this is just staggering to me when I think about the 4 great economies of the world are all plant-derived, all of them, every single one of them. And it's so let's keep going. Number 1, oil. I mean, maybe everybody knows, maybe they don't, but oil comes from plants. It's organic matter that has been buried deep in the earth under great pressure and heat. And instead of it composting, instead of it rotting, it turns into oil. All right, if you take a 55-gallon drum and filled it full of vegetation, by the end of summer, I've done this, not because I was trying to do this, but just didn't throw the trash out. And by the end of summer, you have just maybe 5 gallons of this muck. It looks like oil, it's black. I don't know if it'd burn or anything. But if you think about this, if it takes 55 gallons of vegetation to make, you know, 5 gallons of oil, and you think of the hundreds and billions of gallons of oil we're pumping out of the earth, how much vegetation did that represent? This place must have been a stinking jungle. I mean, it must have, I can't even fathom how much vegetation that is. I mean, look at the western Kansas and the Flint Hills. There isn't enough vegetation there to hardly, you know, run an SUV probably for a year. I mean, there's just nothing there. The amount of vegetation that came from that. Okay, all the coal, that's all from the same stuff, plants. There is a ton of stinking coal. Natural gas. Natural gas comes off the the coal and it comes off the oil wells and all that. And so again, this is all plant derived. Now, some of you in here might be thinking, who needs to sell petunias? I'd rather sell oil. You know, I mean, there is probably some mysteries in here, and there's some things in here with plants that if a guy got real creative and thoughtful, might be able to come up with something that's incredible. Plus, are plants a renewable resource? Absolutely. They are absolutely renewable. So when you're looking at thinking about how to come up with something that's going to serve the needs of humanity, you want something that's renewable, and it very much is. And then diamonds. Well, I mean, that's coal. It's been compressed into a whole new crystal. Is that incredible? That's all from plants. Oil, natural gas, coal, and diamonds. And, you know, it's all just right out there in our front yards and in the greenhouse. All right. Well, back to plant hunters. This is, you look at this right here and you go, well, can people make a living at this? And it says, being a specialized occupation, botanical collecting has had its professionals, men's hired by botanical gardens, horticultural societies, governments interested in economic plants, and syndicates of private gardeners. But the amateurs, mostly a primary occupation like missionaries, consular officials, supercargoes, and other with private means, have also made great contributions to the artificial redistribution of plants. Even back in those days, there was a way to make money at it. Does anybody in here want to be able to make money at plants and at gardening and in horticulture and all that? I mean, it's pretty exciting. So why are you here? You're here because you're either interested in plants or you're interested in business. And quite frankly, you will get the same result of both. If you're interested in plants and you want to be around very long, you got to learn business. And if you're going to be in business, you have to have a product to sell. And if you're deciding to sell the service of caring for plants or plants, then in the end, you will get the same results. I think the more noble reason is the love of plants, but we'll keep going into that. And again, it is a very broad, and there's a lot of options in here. And even as myself, as I go through what I'm going through in my career as a garden center operator, I'm thinking way out beyond that. How can I make my richer by being more involved with plants and horticulture in a lot of arenas? And these are very obvious, and I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but you know, there is a lot of professions and there's a lot of things that you can do, and you don't want to limit yourself. You never know. I mean, well, okay, so we talk about, you know, and I'm going to approach this all from the love of plants. So if somebody really loves to grow plants for food, they're going to end up in farming and agriculture. Some that love to arrange flowers, they're going to be florists. You know, a lot of us look at it as like, well, I'm going to be a florist, so what does that mean I'm going to arrange flowers? No, I love to arrange flowers. Then you will be a great florist. I love to grow food. You will be a great farmer. Some love the intrigue of living things, scientists and biologists. Man, I'm telling you, the art and the science behind plants is fascinating. There is no way that you can't be in this very long and you get drugged right into it. You want to know what makes that plant work? Why does this happen? Why do these things, the difference in day lengths, the difference in temperature regimes, the difference in, these plants are incredible. Master of the art of growing plant. Hey, there's Dr. Alan Stevens. He's teaching a whole generation of people on the art of horticulture and how to love horticulture. It's awesome. And there's the greenhouses. I call that the zoo. You know, you go to the zoo and they have animals from all over the world and people get all excited. You know, we have a zoo. It's called a greenhouse. We have plants from all over the world. They're caged and they're captured, and you can come and observe them, and they come from all over the world. The arrangement of plants for function of outdoor use, obviously landscaping, and there's aesthetic aspects of landscaping, and who knows, I mean, right now the whole thing with green roofs and trying to make the earth not a big heat pool, this landscaping is not just about aesthetics, it's really about what is right for managing our earth. And to me, guys, I think of a horticulturist and I think of our landscapers as stewards of the earth. We are the ones that should know more about how to keep plants alive and how to take care of our earth than anybody else. The natural importance of plants, naturalists. How about that? Helping people understand plants. You know, I got to thank Lika for having this symposium and all this. It's getting a bunch of people together that are hopefully, there's going to be some synergy from this, that we can all go out and do a better job in the horticultural world and in the plant world. Some love the economics of working with plants and people, the private investors. One of the things about growing plants is you got to know what the enemy of plants are. And the entomologists and the pathologists are our best friends, because as much as maybe it's not vogue to talk about chemicals and things like that, the potato famine, for one, shows that if we don't know how to stop these things, they will take us out. I can tell you that in the greenhouse business, I've never found a bug that wants to peacefully coexist with me. I've never found a disease that will peacefully coexist. What do they want to do? They will reproduce till I'm destroyed. And so now it's down, it's like, it's me versus them, and I take it personally. And I don't like spraying chemicals, but you know what? I'll bet you there's not one of you in here that if you had a house, who has houses in here, right? If you have cockroaches in your house or termites, what are you going to do? Peacefully coexist? No. Now, maybe there's better ways of controlling these things than the ways that we're doing it now, but I'm telling you, they will take you out. And if you're going to be in this industry and you don't have an appreciation for how to manage the chemicals and the bugs and the diseases that come along with having plants, you will quite find yourself on the losing side of this battle. And it's, I have been threatened multiple times with things that were horrible. And that goes right into this, the ecological impact of plants, the environmentalists and the ecologists, and they're, you know, I love these guys because they're the ones that are going to be able to go back and tell us, are you guys being good stewards? Are you being good managers? And if they're coming back with feedback saying, hey, these things that you're doing, they're showing up somewhere, well, then again, it comes back to the colleges, it comes back to the great minds and the great thinkers, is like, let's come up with a better way. Let's figure out a way to take care of this problem if that product is a problem. And then I love this, lunar and interstellar gardening. I don't even know if we have a class in college for this yet, but they ought to have one here pretty soon that, you know, I mean, obviously, if we're going to go to the moon or Mars, there is no way there will be life if there's no plants. There is no life where there is not plants. That's the bottom of the food chain, and it's got to be there in abundance for multiple reasons. And then some call it a job, we'll work for food, you know, that can happen. I have found that people that don't love doing this, they end up unemployed because it's brutal. It will test you in every single way of between the weather and between, well, what's the next slide? Interest in business. Warning, this industry is always changing and normal business rules may not always apply. Proceed at your own risk. I think that's a fair warning. So what is your business plan? You know, as a business, you got to determine what your product is, you got to determine what your service is, and then what are the challenges of that business, especially of agricultural economics. And I think this next slide is going to probably tell us why a lot of people don't do very well at this. And this is the life of a caregiver. And when you're dealing with things that are alive, and I don't mean this to be in any way in the order of importance, but I mean, if you're taking care of plants, animals, kids, anything that's alive, there is all sorts of things you have to know, and you literally have to give your life to make those things work because they all require your care, your touch, or whatever. And if you don't like being that much in demand, you're going to hate this job. On the other hand, if the things that you grow and the things that you take care of bring you great joy, then you're going to find it probably easier to spend the time and the energy that's necessary to care for those things. So again, if we're going to talk about plants, obviously you really need to know the anatomy and physiology, the pathology, the entomology, the biochemistry, and then the agricultural lifestyle. Hold on, don't do that. I mean, those other ones are all pretty easy to understand. You can sit in a classroom and learn those. There's great teachers and there's great books. That agricultural lifestyle is foreign to our society right now. You know, probably 50 years ago, almost everybody knew somebody on a farm or even spent some time on a farm. So you got a little bit of a feel about, you know, uncle or grandpa or somebody getting up at the crack of dawn and coming back in the dark. That lifestyle in agriculture is still very much a reality. It's not the 8 to 5, you know, 5-day-a-week job. When you're caring for something alive, it's a 7-day-a-week job. Now, if you got enough help and you got trained people and you can take turns, it works out great. But if you don't, you better be willing to step up. And then when the conditions change, whether it's weather, pathogens, disease, insects, or whatever, it rocks your world, and those things are even more reliant upon you. And when the things are under stress, when it's bitterly cold or when it's extremely hot, your card comes up in a greater way. So in general, you kind of, in this business, literally you reap what you sow. There's a lot of parables about agriculture, and if you think about this, your plants in your business are a direct reflection of your care and knowledge. You're the difference. The human touch is the merging of knowledge, inspiration, and science. You know, the science is hard, but it's easy. Knowledge is kind of hard, but easy. But when you put the two together and with inspiration, that's when it becomes a working, valuable product to society. And then what is really interesting is that we engage in this. If we want to know how we're doing, business is the great evaluator of our product, service, and mission. Whether it's a non-for-profit or for a profit, or whether it's a display gardens or a botanic garden or whatever, all that stuff gets tested to find out, do we know our stuff? Do we know plants? Do we understand their limitations? Do we know the things that can be the problem? And then, on the business side of it, can we figure out a way to do it profitably? And that's the challenge that I think we're all faced with right now. So does all this matter? There was this book called The Safe Methods of Business. It was by Northwestern College back, it was in the 1800s. And one of the statements was, why approach life or business with only half your soul? I think horticulture, you can't be in it halfway. Your plants will die. Your plants will look half dead. They won't reflect very well. So you want to be in this with all your heart and soul. And then I think Proverbs sums it up right. Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will serve before kings. He'll not serve before obscure men. I was extremely jealous. We do a lot of bus tours, and we went up and visited with Bachman's, and who's a great garden center up in Minneapolis. And the White House called them for their poinsettias. And I thought, here's someone that's skilled in what they do and well respected. And man, you're not going to serve before obscure men if you got the goods and you're bringing it. And to think of the possibility of maybe, serving in that way with our product and our services is I think it's something to shoot for. It's something that is kind of fun to even dream about on the bitterly cold sub-zero days when it seems like there's no life going on at all in this business. But with that, that's all I want to do. I hope everybody here gets inspired and psyched up about plants and then can take this home and take it to another level. So.